Welcome to Sober.Coffee, a weekly coffee chat sharing experience, strength, and hope for anyone on the sober road to recovery. You can download Sober.Coffee weekly on all podcast platforms and check us out on Instagram at Sober.Coffee Podcast and on Twitter at Sober.Coffee Pod. To learn more about us and to help support these sessions, visit online at Sober.Coffee. Here are your hosts, two guys on their own path to recovery, Mike and Glenn. Let's join them at the coffee shop.
Morning, Jay.
Hey, man. What's up, Mikey?
How are you? Hey, Don. Good morning. Welcome back.
Morning, Mike.
Yeah, it's been a while since
Don,
we've coffeed with you.
Morning, Glenn.
This is good stuff.
Great to have you join us.
Yeah. Love getting together, talking about all things sobriety, right? So.
Oh, I just come for the coffee.
Oh, is that where? Well, we're going to give you a little experience, strength, and hope. That's extra. That's what we call a extra latte.
So ESH, E-S-H.
Experience, strength, and hope.
Yeah, we'll trademark that, Mikey.
Yeah.
Don, it's good to have you.
Yeah.
Thanks. Good to be here.
Yeah. So, Glenn, you called me this week. I loved what you said. You shared a story, and I'm gonna do the Glenn story because I do it better than yourself. But
That's awesome.
So Glenn's in a meeting. He's about a year and a half into the program. I'm probably exaggerating a little bit. He's about a year and a half into the program, and they wrap up the meeting. They go, okay, from pages 83 and 84 of the big book, Alcoholics Anonymous, titled, these are the promises. You know, if we are painstaking about the space of our development, et cetera, et cetera. And Glenn taps the shoulder of the guy who's sitting next to him. He says, wow, those are outstanding. When did they start reading those? He says, Glenn, we've been reading them every day since you started coming to meetings. So, Glenn, sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly. How'd that work out for you?
I guess that shows you where my head was at during that time.
Yeah,
and it was actually not a year and a half. It was 2 years.
Was it 2 years? So I was exaggerating on the high end.
Oh, my gosh. It was 2 years. I felt like an idiot.
Yeah.
Like I normally do.
Yeah, but love the promises. You know, we do the steps. We talked a lot about the steps, which come from Alcoholics Anonymous Big Book. There's really the first 164 pages is what I'm embracing for my roadmap to better living, and right in the middle of those 164 pages is the promises, and they're outstanding, and Glenn, I know that you put a lot of weight into the promises. I know that when you work with guys, you start with it's kind of the end of the book, you know. What are you going to get for all your effort, if you will?
Yeah, that's exactly what I do. In fact, they read them at the end of every meeting, right? But I mean, as soon as somebody, wants me to sponsor them, we have a couple conversations, and I, start to connect with them, and their first suggestion, right? And we talk about wax on, wax off, and I'm going to say, hey, there's probably going to be things I'm going to ask you to do, suggest that you do, and you're not going to like them and not going to make sense. Just do them, Mm-hmm. And so we actually start out with an exercise with the promises, and the way I frame it with them is that it's like reading the last chapter of a book, right? Mm-hmm. So as you go through the steps, and this is just how I do it, and it's probably wrong, but it makes sense to me, right? Because there's not really a roadmap for sponsorship, so I can make stuff up. And so I say, hey, it's like reading the last chapter of a book. I said, we're going to go through these steps, and we're going to ask you to do things that aren't going to seem right to you. They're going to seem out of your normal way of operating. But I want you to start with the end in mind, right? So let's read the promises, and let's focus on the promises, do an exercise with the promises, so that now it makes sense when you're in step 2 or step 3 and things aren't making sense, or you're afraid out of your mind for step 4. You can always refer back to those promises and say, hey, this is why I'm doing
the why.
This.
The why.
This is the why.
So important.
So I have them go through the promises, and we're going to read them here in a second. But I have them go through the promises, word by word, and analyze them. And write down what it means. And first thing is, I have learned in this program that words matter, especially with the promises. In the big book, there's a chapter that says there is a solution. It doesn't say there might be, it doesn't say there could be. In the promises, it says they will always materialize. Doesn't say sometimes, doesn't say, hey, if you win the lottery. It says they will always materialize, right? So I've learned that words matter, and I frame that. So I have them break down the promises, write it out, word for word, what each sentence means to them. Then subsequently, if you look a year or 2 years down the road and look back, because now you've been through the program, right? And you've worked the program, and now you can look back and you can look at how you initially thought of the promises as you were coming in. Right. So it gives you a good checkpoint, I think. And then, as we've talked about, I like to relate kind of living without alcohol, living sober as, I used to live right-handed, now I live left-handed, right? So one of the things I started doing is I have my sponsees write out their analysis to the promises with their left hand.
Oh, that's I don't know if that's genius or brutal. I'm not sure.
I think it's brutal, and I kind of chuckle when I suggest that they do that, and it looks like garbage, and it really kind of frames their mindset that, hey, this is different. Right. This is, I'm going to start looking at things differently.
I can't read what I wrote with the right hand.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So Glenn, I thought just a little contextual. So they're called the 9-step promises. And so when you start reading on page 1 of the big book in your quest to get to 164, at each step, after each step in the big book, which if you haven't heard our coffee sessions on steps, go back and listen to steps 1 through 12. We kind of give a little insight into them. But at the end of each step is a prayer, and so these are the 9-step prayers. So as you're going to read them, it starts out, if you are painstaking about this phase of our development. That means we're assuming that you've worked the steps, right? So these promises don't come through to somebody who just, in theory, doesn't drink and go to meetings. These are as a result of of working the steps. Somebody can hold out hope for these promises. So, do you have them in front of you by chance, Glenn?
I actually do. All right, here we go. Page 83, 84 of the big book. If we are painstaking about this phase of our development, we will be amazed before we are halfway through. We are going to know a new freedom and a new happiness. We will not regret the past nor wish to shut the door on it. We will comprehend the word serenity, and we will know peace. No matter how far down the scale we have gone, we will see how our experience can benefit others. That feeling of uselessness and self-pity will disappear. We will lose interest in selfish things and gain interest in our fellows. Self-seeking will slip away. Our whole attitude and outlook on life will change. Fear of people and of economic insecurity will leave us. We will intuitively know how to handle situations which used to baffle us. We will suddenly realize that God is doing for us what we could not do for ourselves. Are these extravagant promises? We think not. They are being fulfilled among us, sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly. They will always materialize if we work for them.
Right.
Boom.
It's good stuff. So you actually have them tackled before the 12. You have them tackled word by word from if to all the way to if we work for them.
Absolutely. I have them break it down. It's usually, 4 or 5 pages of writing, but it's interesting to get their perspective, right? Like the word if, right?
Right.
If is a choice.
If is a choice.
And then the word, we, right?
We, yeah, that's right.
So it's a we program. And then the word painstaking. That usually catches people's attention, like, oh my gosh, what? I mean, painstaking for me is not comfortable. I don't like painstaking, these words start to really capture, and it's a good exercise. It's a good way for them to, kind of say, hey, but a lot of them are also going through like absolute hell.
Sure.
Right. So when they see some of these things in the promises, it gives them hope. Right. It's like, wow. Okay, yeah, that's what I want to stop that. I want to stop my fear of economic insecurity.
Right.
Boy, I would love that.
Right.
So it kind of gives them a good framework.
So let me ask, and I'm so glad Don's here with us this morning. So Don, let me just ask you. Glenn has framed out the promises. You've got a couple of 24-hour periods under your belt. If you don't mind me saying, can you tell me how many what sobriety you have?
I'm working on 40 years.
40 years.
November this year will be 40 years.
So can you tell me from the vantage of somebody who's got 40 years of sobriety, have the promises come through to you?
I think, yeah, for sure. Most of them have. Like I told Glenn earlier, the fear of economic insecurity. I said I'm still saving my dental floss because I'm too cheap to buy a new one. So I don't know if I quite got there yet on that one, but that's always been me. And I'm also cutting grass on the side for a couple extra bucks that I really don't need. I think that's actually just to keep myself busy so I don't go nuts.
But you're not worried. But you're not worried about paying your bills.
Not at all. I'm in better shape than I ever thought I'd be. Let's put it this way: I was drinking, I'd probably be bankrupt. So So I'm good. I'm good with that. Yeah, most of the stuff has come for me by all means. Especially the serenity part, man. I believe it or not, I actually have some serenity, as nervous as I am.
Yeah. The thing is, for me and Glenn, I'm sure you're going to touch on this because I've heard your story before, but not all of it, but I've heard some of it, and that is that there are things that when I first heard the promises, I thought, well, those are fantastic, but that's not my specific list. I had a specific list of things I wanted to come true, or at least the things came true that weren't even on the list. And maybe it is with the words twisted a different way, but the relationships that have been healed, and yes, it certainly talks about that. But relationships healed, positions I'm in right now, my manner of thinking, have all been, what was obviously broken has been healed.
Yeah, it's funny. When you talk about making a list, that day that you referenced, where I heard the promises, I can remember that night, and I was living with a sober buddy in the program, and I can remember going back to my bedroom that night, and I had a gorgeous sunset going down, and I remember pulling out a legal pad and writing down a list, of all the things I was going to get back, and hey, it was the fast car, it was the 6,000 square foot house, and it was all the money and the prestige and family and kids. I was going to get all this stuff back, and I sat there. I'm like, well, hey, that's what it said, right? I mean, it says, and it just shows you as I look back how naive I was, or maybe even desperate, or but what I can say today, without a shadow of a doubt, is as I read these promises, they are coming true for me in my life, and I can say that with 100% confidence. What I can also say is that it looks nothing like that original list. Mm-hmm. And the only thing that I can attribute it to, is the 12 steps and how they have changed me. Mm-hmm. And specifically step 3, right? So in step 3, turn our will and our life over the care of God as we understand him. So as I made that original list, I can sit there and say, well, Glenn was in the driver's seat. Mm-hmm. And that's what Glenn wanted. That's what drove Glenn. That's what fed Glenn. That's what satisfied Glenn. That's how Glenn's going to be fulfilled, is get that original list back. Because that's the stuff that was important to me at that time. So today, as I look at this list and I can say that the promises are coming true, the only thing I can point to is that there's a different driver of the bus, different pilot of the plane, whatever phrase you want to use. And it's different today. And yet, as I look at the list today, it looks nothing like the original list. But I am more satisfied, and I am more grateful, and I get more peace and serenity, from the list that's being fulfilled today than I ever would have been with getting that original list back.
Right?
Amazing.
I'm asking for the newcomer, but how quickly can these happen? It says in there sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly. When I came into the program, and I'm sure there's friends joining us at the virtual coffee shop today, how quickly can they come? Because I was in such a desperate need to grab onto something, to see some kind of result from my effort, from the if. I mean, you have spent, quite a few 24 hours, and these are being fulfilled. Can you rush it? One of my favorite lines, sometimes you can't have 9 babies in a month, right? I mean, it takes 9 months to have the baby. It just doesn't. So, Glenn, any insight on how do you know, or is there a time, or is there an order? Extend a branch of hope to the newcomer.
Yeah, that's great, Mike. And I'm reminded of, years ago I used to travel 100% for business, and I used to be a part of the United 1K Club, and that got you first class all the time, and you could bump other people, all the ego filling stuff, and what I knew about the 1K Club is there was only one way to join the 1K Club. Mm-hmm. Your butt had to sit in the seat for 100,000 miles. Mm-hmm. You couldn't buy your way in. You couldn't talk your way in. You couldn't manipulate your way in. There's nothing you could do other than sit in that seat. So I'm reminded of that when I think of the promises, and I think of that last line. Sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly. For me, it's just like the 1K Club. I have to sit my butt in that seat. I have to work the steps. I have to be diligent about my program. And for me, I'm on the slow train. Mm-hmm. I just am. And I've accepted that. Most things in life I want today. Mm-hmm. And I'll do, I used to do anything I had to do to fulfill my immediate needs today. I'm okay. I'm more patient today. That's one of the things and ways that I've changed is I'm able to look and assess, right? And as I look back, a lot of things I got quick in life, they weren't sustainable. Mm-hmm. And it took me a while. In fact, I'm going on 4 different channels here, so I'll finish your question eventually.
Excuse me 1 second. Can we get a decaf over here for the gentleman?
Yeah, no.
To make it regular.
Four more full-blown caps, right?
Go ahead.
So, I heard the story of a guy who went to rehab, right? And the first night in rehab, he kneels next to his bunk and he prays, and it's like a bolt of lightning, and his life changed. He walked out of rehab like early and never drank again. Never thought about drinking. His life was perfect ever since. Mm-hmm. Either A, I don't believe him, or B, I'm jealous. Mm-hmm. Because C, for me, it's really been slow. Mm-hmm. And that goes back to what we said before about suffering better. Suffering through the slow times, knowing that hey, this is a process. Frankly, I probably don't believe the guy, right? Because I just know change takes time. So people say, well, change takes 30 days. Bullshit. Not for something like this. Not to go from being a right-hander to a left-hander. For me, I'm still working on it. Mm-hmm. My inner brain says, Glenn, you're a right-hander. My inner brain says, Glenn, you got pain. You got, you're uncomfortable. You're not liking how things are going. You need to escape. Mm-hmm. And my inner brain says, go drink, because drinking worked for me for so long. And I'm working with a sponsor right now. I mean, for me, it took me about 3 years to get my quote unquote sober legs under me. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I hate to say that. And I purposely let it, I was in a situation where, hey, I was starting to work again, and I was starting to have relationships, and I was fortunate there. I didn't have to jump back into the fire, but I purposely didn't jump back in the fire. Mm-hmm. I said, you know what? I'm building a foundation. I'm building a sober foundation, a sober life, and it takes time to put the pieces together.
Sure.
Got a sponsee, he's high flyer, and he gets out of a disastrous detox. And I'm coaching him on, I've been through 75 plus of them, so I've got some experience. Right. So I coached him. I said, hey, look, let's just take it easy, take it slow. within 30 days, he wants to buy a house. He wants to open up a new business. He wants to get married to his girlfriend. He wants to be super dad to his kids. And in 32 days, he's building not deep and wide, he's building up.
Right.
And he's got no foundation. And I told him, I said, dude, this is going to crash. You have no roots.
Sure, yeah.
And guess what?
It crashed.
It crashed. And then it crashed again and again. And, he refuses to just sit back and wait. They say, hey, you should wait a year to make big decisions. There is a reason for that. Right, Don? How many times have you seen it?
Oh, yeah,
right?
for sure.
But this is somebody who hasn't surrendered, isn't willing to take direction, and he knows what's best. So it's like I was. I'm looking in the mirror. What hospital am I going to next? So for me, I'm on the slow train, and I'm okay with that today. I really am.
Okay, good stuff.
I think,
go ahead, Dan.
I was just going to say, I think things start happening after you lose the obsession for alcohol.
Right.
Once the mind starts to clear and you're not focused on booze all of the time, good things start to happen.
Right.
Like I said, overall, I'm pretty damn happy no matter what. Overall, I don't know, you want to ask my kids that. But,
right.
But
do you still have peace? Do you have serenity? Do you still have pain?
Yeah, I
do you still have problems?
I'm happy with pretty much everything.
Awesome.
I mean, everything in my life, let's put it that way.
Right.
Yeah, so that's a great thing.
I think that's a great point. I mean, I think if you have the obsession, compulsion to drink, and that's your focus, you're really you need that transition, that transformation. The steps then allow you to be focused on something new and exciting, which is growth, personal growth. And that's the real beauty of step 6 and 7, which a lot of times people kind of fly over. But if you really dig into step 6 and 7, it really begins to allow you to focus on making yourself a better person. And yes, I think the result of that effort, that painstaking effort, is what the promises are talking about here. And my favorite words in the promises, Glenn, are the last 4 or 5 words, if we work for them. And I came into the program so desperate for change, so desperate for light in a dark world. I was willing to do whatever everybody said. So if I went into a meeting and I heard 4 suggestions, man, I went home tackling those 4 suggestions. And the next night I would get 3 more suggestions, and the following night 5 more suggestions. And I figured the more I did, the better the result could be. Did that accelerate my serenity? No. But for me, I wanted it bad enough and I hung on those words, if we work for them. And that doesn't mean just checking into a meeting. There are so many elements to the program that are important, working the steps, staying connected to others. And I think we've talked about it, and Glenn, you certainly talked about it here this morning. It's working with others. That guy that it's just working with him. It's so rewarding for me to work with the next alcoholic, because it's a relearning experience for me each time. Each time I do step 6, each time I do step 7, each time I do step 9, it's a learning experience for me. It's a growing experience, and it brings me closer to more promises being fulfilled.
Yeah, and I agree, Mike. I love those words, if we work for them. But I also love the words right before it. They will always materialize. Always. So, in a world that we have today, where everybody wants to give a guarantee and nobody follows it up.
Right.
Everybody's got a warranty and nobody follows it up. Right. And here it says, here's somebody bold enough to say they will always materialize. Again, it doesn't say could be, might be. Right. If you're lucky.
Right.
On the third Tuesdays, it will always materialize if you work for it.
That's right.
And hey, just going through, will not regret the past nor wish to shut the door on it.
Right.
I just want to shut I want to shut the door on the past and never look at it again, because it was painful.
That's right.
But now I realize, that my past and my story may be able to help somebody else.
Absolutely.
Give somebody else some hope, give somebody else some tools on how to try things. But as my sponsor said, he said, hey, the past should be like the rearview mirror.
Mm-hmm.
Your windshield is, nice and big, and your rearview mirror is little.
Right.
And that was good for me because a lot of times, I used my rearview mirror was as big as my windshield.
Right.
I was so busy looking in the past, and letting that really just grind on my psyche and my emotions.
Right.
Then I love what it says about, we will comprehend the word serenity and we will know peace.
Yeah, peace is a word that.
How do you define peace?
Well, I'll tell you what. I know how I don't. I know the opposite of peace, and the opposite of peace is how I lived before. I was chaos in motion. I attracted chaos. I manufactured chaos. Chaos drove my life because then I could deflect everything that was going on around me, and like the little pea under the 3 cups, no one would know that it was really alcohol that I was trying to hide. So can I define peace? All I know is I can tell you that the feeling that I have inside me now, by virtue of working the steps, working the program, is I have something inside me that's not chaos. I have something inside me. I magnate to non-chaotic people. Does that make sense?
No, absolutely.
It's the void of chaos.
Sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
How about you, Don? How do you define peace?
How do I define peace? I guess peace of mind would be for me, my not going crazy and being obsessed over something, not being afraid of certain
fear.
things.
Right.
Fear, lack of fear. And overall, I'd say I'm pretty much there. I feel pretty comfortable in life. I mean, everybody eats the shit sandwich now and then,
Yeah, right.
I mean, that's going to happen no matter what. And I think it's not what happens, but how you deal with it.
Right.
That's really important. And that's what this program teaches us.
Right.
It's like you said, no matter the promises promise a lot, and they do fulfill, but they're not always going to happen every day. You know what I mean? It's
Right.
gonna be,
On a daily basis.
You're going to have to.
Right.
You're going to have to deal with deal with crap.
Yeah, it's funny. As I think of the word peace, and again, we've talked about how do you define these words, right? Especially happiness. How do you define happiness?
Right. Sure.
But peace is something that, again, I go back to that bedroom, and I wish I had taken better notes because I forget exactly. It might have been around the 3-year mark. But I was in that bedroom, another great sunset, and I can remember for 5 minutes, I had a feeling that I've never felt before in my life. Mm-hmm. And it was just a feeling that everything was right. And it was so calm, and it was just, and the only word that I can use to define that feeling was peace. Mm-hmm. And after that 5 minutes, the chaos and the head trash started coming back in my own head, and it was gone. But I can remember very clearly what I told myself. I said, Glenn, if you keep doing what you're doing, right? Mm-hmm. If you keep working this program, you'll probably get that feeling again. Mm-hmm. And about 30 days later, I get the same feeling again. And again, it was just a snippet, 5 minutes or so. And that gave me hope.
Right.
That, hey, if I keep doing this, if I keep working for it, that and other promises will continue to come true. Mm-hmm. And now today, maybe I get that feeling 2 or 3 times a week.
Right.
I still have a lot of chaos. I still have my head trash I got to deal with.
But you got a place to go back to.
You know what? I have hope that if I continue to do, what it is for me, it's a reminder.
Right.
It's a reminder that I'm on the right path. I'm playing from the right fairway. Hey, you know what? I still swing and shank the ball, but at least I know I'm playing from the right fairway. And I look at peace and serenity today as a reward.
Right.
I really do. And that's, I said to a guy I was working with, we were talking about assets. He goes, hey, what's your greatest asset? And I said, I really believe, peace is my greatest asset. It's what I crave the most in this life. Mm-hmm. And again, that's just the feeling that everything is right at that moment. And then he looked at me and goes, nah. He goes, I think your story's your greatest asset.
Yeah, right.
Wow.
I heard those feelings once they explained as soul feelings versus world feelings, which made a lot of sense to me. We got that up at the retreat house. We were up there like looking at a sunset would be a soul feeling. The feeling you get when you buy a new car, world feeling.
Right,
you
sure.
know what I mean?
Right.
The feeling you have when you have your first child would be a soul feeling.
Soul feeling.
The feeling you have when you win a race
Right.
would be a world feeling.
Right.
You know what I mean? They're completely
Interesting.
different.
Right.
Completely
Right.
different. The other one's, second one's manufactured.
Right.
The world feelings.
That's awesome. I love the promises.
Love the promises.
Love starting out with the promises, and that way you know what you're working towards. I'm not sure if that makes sense, but that's what we're doing.
You know, I'd love to maybe unpack them one at a time one time, right?
Oh,
Wouldn't
I
that
think
make
that'd be
sense?
great. I
Just
think that'd be
do a
great.
series of coffees and
Yeah.
just kind of talk about things like serenity and, you know, but I think for me it's important to know, important to remember that the promises do come true. Sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly, but always if we work for them. And it's not, I've learned it's not a one and done program. It's a continual motion of improvement and trust and surrender, you know, because the more if I think I can figure these things out by my effort, I'll tell you right now that didn't work out well for me. But if I do it with another alcoholic who understands me and is willing to be honest with me and say, Mike, you're coming out of your lane. You're trying too hard. You're not trying hard enough. To get that guidance is invaluable. And I get that guidance without any expectation of return on their part. I mean, they're just doing it out of unconditional love and desire for me to live a better life. So I pass that along. I try to anyway.
Yeah, I think passing along is great. In fact, you know, Don, you'll probably relate to this too. I mean, when I went through the first 164 pages and went through the 12 steps myself, you know, that was like X, right?
Right.
You know, I knew the program and learned the program at X level. You know, what I've learned and what I'm hearing from you, Mike, and Don, is that when you work with others, that's a multiplier. I have really learned so much more about
Sure.
these steps in this program by working with others.
Right.
Like times 10 of what I learned.
That's right.
With, you know, just going through them myself. Because when I go through with others, I actually do the steps again with them.
Right.
And I get their perspective, and just some of the exercises that we do and some of the suggestions. I mean, it just adds different light and expands, and it's just a lifelong thing, man. It's
Right.
again
And
slow
if
train.
And if I could put an exclamation mark on that, if somebody's joining us today for coffee for maybe the first time, and they're trying to do this thing alone, don't.
Yeah,
Go find.
Right.
That's awesome, Mike.
Reach out, man. Find somebody.
Amen, yeah.
Find somebody who
Can't do
knows you, who understands you, and that's real easy. Just find another alcoholic. They'll get it.
And you can always reach us at
Can always reach us.
podcast at Sober.Coffee, podcast at Sober.Coffee is a good
point you
email
in-
for us.
Yeah, we'll point you in the right direction.
Yeah, we're there.
This has been great, Glenn. I mean, we
great
could spend
joining us
hours.
again,
Yeah,
Chief.
hey, Don, thanks for joining
Thanks
us
for
again.
having me.
Yeah, it's been great,
the
man.
promises should be a 4-hour session.
I know, right? All right,
That's
we got to
awesome,
go.
man.
We got to go back to work.
I love you guys.
All right, see you,
Have a
Glenn.
great day.
All right, see you, Donnie.
Thanks for joining us for today's coffee chat. To contact the show, email us at podcast@sober.coffee. If you need immediate help, the AA hotline is 800-839-1686. The National Suicide Prevention Hotline is 800-273-8255. Remember, Mike and Glenn are sharing their own journey on the path to recovery. Any suggestions, medical or otherwise, are their own experiences and should not be viewed as professional advice. See you next week, and remember, there is a solution.
Stay safe in the city of Chicago. Beautiful city.